Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This talk is not going to be a very scholarly one. One, because it's not by a scholar, and the other is because what we're going to talk about in this short period of time is not actually aimed for scholars, or it's not something we present to scholars. It's something that a common man can present to a common man when it comes to belief in God. And we also are aware of the fact that the vast majority of the world at the moment is turning away from religion, and it's on a very rapid pace. So, you know, the person who works at the news agents, or your classmate, or the person that you work out with at the gym, they don't particularly believe or not believe in God because of a philosophical ideology or because of a scientific theory. It's just a common man's common sense telling them not to believe in God. So that doesn't require a very scholarly approach to them, because not majority of the people around us have given up their belief in God because they don't, they can't make sense of the cosmological argument or the ontological argument or any other such philosophical / scientific arguments. It's because they have not been able to make sense of the concept of God. So that is the way we'll have to look at it, and that is the way we'll have to present it to them. So whenever I ask somebody that if you came across an atheist, somebody tells you, I don't simply believe in God, what would you do? The answer I usually get is that I'll tell them this, and I'll tell them this, and I'll talk to them about that, and I'll tell them that, and I'll say this, and I'll say that. Very rarely is it about, I listen to them. I listen to what they have to say. So the first rule of thumb, talking to a common man, is listening to what they have to say, rather than just presenting them argument over argument over argument, because that simply is not going to work, because they've made up their mind. So you have to see why they've come to the conclusion that they have come to, because without that we will never be able to explain to them. So the first part of it would be to listen to what they have to say. Now, after that, the main and the most important bit is to find a common ground to talk to them. The Holy Quran teaches us that the best way to have a discourse or a discussion or a debate with people who are from different faiths is by finding the common ground where we can discuss our beliefs mutually. Now, one may argue that this is maybe only for people of the book, people who belong to a certain religion, because then it becomes easier to find a common ground. But the thing is, because it's a Quranic principle, as a Muslim, I would believe, and I'm sure every one of you would believe, that it applies to every situation. You will have to find a common ground to be able to take the discussion somewhere and to get to any type of conclusions that you want, or your desired conclusions. So can there be a common ground talking to an atheist? It's about finding them. There is no set rule, there is no set formula. It depends on who you're talking to. And every one of us in this world is unique, and we have a unique way, the way our mind works. So there is no rule, there is no formula. You'll have to find that. So for example, they tell you, somebody who doesn't believe, the person that you're talking to, they tell you, well, I personally don't believe in God. Maybe there was a God, but I now think that God is dead. And that is a notion that most of the atheists live with, that maybe even if there was a God, even if there is a God, for me, it's simply dead. Again, there is a common ground where you can believe, where you can actually talk to them in a way that they'll be able to relate to you. And then you can tell them further down the line in the discussion that the promised Messiah, ﷺ, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, one of the basic teachings of his of the Jamaat that he formed, and one of his basic teachings was that Isa ko marne do, कि इसी में इस्लाम की हयात है. let Isa die, let Jesus Christ die, because it's in the death of Jesus Christ that lies the survival of Islam. So we should actually be thankful to the atheists who have let their God die, because their God, they're actually talking about a Christian God. Now, to understand this, we'll have to go into the history of European monarchy, which obviously we don't have the time, and neither is that the scope of this discussion here. But in a nutshell, it was the kings and queens of the European nations being taken as the custodians of faith, and them taken to be the representatives of God on this earth, them exploiting their subjects in the worst possible manner, where they were living, most of the subjects living below the line of poverty, and the kings and queens just living an extravagant and a very lavish and a very luxurious lifestyle. That is where the common man actually got to think, if this is a representative of God, then essentially God is unjust, and God does not do justice to mankind. And that is where they got put off of the idea and the whole of the theological basis of Christianity, which was the divinity of a man. And when Nietzsche in Germany declared, God is dead, he was talking on behalf of the Western modern mind. And it is the Western modern mind that does believe that, that is where they actually got their faith got derailed from the divinity of man. So Jesus Christ, taking Jesus Christ to have passed away, will be the first step into moving on into any discourse. Now, when we're talking to the common man, like I said, they might not necessarily believe or disbelieve in God, or not believe in God, owing to a particular philosophical or scientific theory. But we must also remember that the modern mind is actually very much accustomed to scientific approach in most of the things that we look at and the way we understand them. The approach is scientific. The understanding might not be. So you have to, again, play on the same grounds as them. It can't be that they're looking at the whole issue in a scientific manner, justified or not, but you're talking to them in some other way. So a scientific mind will always have to be approached in a scientific manner. A scientific mind is not ready to believe in an eternal being who has existed from time immemorial, eternity, and will exist to eternity. They come up with an argument of saying, well, okay, if he exists from eternity to eternity, this is point A, this is point B, there has to be something beyond and before. So they do not accept the concept of some being having existed from eternity, going to live into eternity. But that same scientific mind does very much believe in infinity. Start counting from zero. Ask that scientific-minded person to start counting from zero and go on as long as they can. Is there an end? There isn't. Ask them to keep counting backwards into -1, -2, -3. Ask them to keep going. Is there an end to that? There isn't. So, it means that they do believe in some things that never had a start and that will never have an end. So we're looking at two things right now. We're looking at the comprehension of the concept of God, understanding it, and the need of a God. When you start understanding, when you start breaking down the concept, you see that they might agree with you about what parallels or analogies you're giving them, but might still not consider the concept of God because they don't seem to feel the need of a God. Moving on, modern scientific man, the modern world that we live in, all of it based on information technology. Information technology, most of it, majority of it is actually based on softwares. All of us, most of us, I would say, 99% of the population, we got of the modern world Having got used to smartphones, I'm sure every one of us is accustomed to using applications which are primarily softwares based on softwares, and softwares where we work, where we do whatever. Even if it's a matter of playing a game on a PlayStation, it's all software based. So I'm sure the modern mind and the modern scientific man will not deny the existence of softwares, but you ask them to open up the computer, the hardware of the computer, and show you where a certain software is installed, where MS Word maybe is installed on that computer. Will they be able to show you that? No. Will they be able to tell you where in the mobile phone, if you open it all up to pieces, to tell you that this is where Snapchat is sitting, and this is where Instagram is, and this is where I've installed WhatsApp? Will they be able to show you that? No. But they will be able to show you the manifestation on the screen and say, oh, well, these are the apps that I have here, and this is where, say, Twitter is, and this is where all these other apps I have. So they're not showing you on the hardware a software or an application sitting physically, yet they believe in it because they can see it manifest on the screen, and they can see it through using it, and they can use it. So, but when you tell them that we believe in God because of his manifestations, they don't really seem to agree with that. So there is somewhere, some issue, some part where we're not being able to connect. It's just not clicking. So why is that? Again, it comes down to the need. They know what Snapchat is used for. They know what Instagram is used for. They know what WhatsApp is used for, and all other softwares and all other applications. But God, they simply don't see or understand the need of a God. So if it's down to need, where is it that we can talk to them, and what is it that we can say to them why we need God? Now that is a very slippery slope, because this is where theory might have to come to an end, and there might be some practical things, there might be some tangible proofs that you might have to provide for them to be able to believe that yes, there is a need of God. Now moving on from here, we go into the most difficult part of this discussion that you might be having with an atheist, establishing the rational understanding of the concept of God, establishing the need of God, and then you've spoken to them about excellence which transcends mere existence. And that is where they might well ask you the question, where they want to see some tangible proof of what excellence you have achieved or I have achieved through believing in God or through being part of a religion. So that is where the trickiest part is. That is where we have to actually look into our own heart and see, and into our own lives and see, is there actually an excellence that we've achieved? So you think of some things and you start listing to them. You tell them, well, belief in God has given me peace of mind. And you tell them, well, belief in God keeps me going on a day-to-day basis. And you tell them that belief in God, he listens to my prayers and he gives me everything that I want. But you have to be careful, because as you list these items, they might be ticking all the boxes against all these items. They might say, and they might be honest in saying they have peace of mind. They might very right be saying, that whatever I've wished for and desired, I have always been given it to you. Maybe it's your God who gave it to me. Thank you very much to you and your God, wherever it came from. But I do have everything that I need, and I do get everything that I require in my life, and thanks to my credit card as well. So that is the trickiest part, where you have to tell them what excellence you have acquired or attained through belief in God. Like I said at the start, I might not be able to give, and I'm not in a position to give any solutions, because there is no set rule, there is no set formula. When we talk about tabligh to non-Ahmadis, to non-Muslims, or to even people who do not simply hold a belief in God altogether, it's not something that can be done through theory. There has to be a practical side of it. So if you're not able to prove to them what makes you a better human being, they might not seriously ever consider believing in God or to believe in any other religion, or even what you have to offer to them in the form of Islam Ahmadiyyat. So I leave you here with a little bit, I share with you here at the end a thought that has always inspired me and has always made me think what it is. We have seen Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, may Allah be his helper, addressing parliamentarians. We've seen him talk to other dignitaries. We've heard him speak to journalists from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of countries and all sorts of nations. And we've seen him addressing large gatherings. We've seen him at Capitol Hill. We've seen him in the European Parliament. He is usually the only one person dressed in his normal attire of a sherwani, of a pagdi, and of a shalwar kameez. But all of those people listen only to him when he speaks, invite him to speak to them, and when he's there, he talks to them, he speaks to them with all the conviction that one can have. He appears there saying, I believe in God. He stands before them and calls them to the God that he believes in, and he tells them what God and God's messenger, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had to offer as a solution to the most modern, most current, most contemporary issues of the world, and how they're still relevant. And all of them listen to him. So it comes down to conviction. And for that, as a starting point, I think we're very lucky to have a leader who exemplifies that conviction in our faith. And that does not merely come out of thin air. He also tells us how that is achieved. So if we believe in God, we will have to actually have the conviction to tell people that we believe in God, and tell people that the solutions that our God has given to all problems are still very relevant, are still very contemporary, and still very modern, and will remain valid for all times to come. Thank you very much.